What's the worst thing you've ever eaten in order to be polite? My grandmother cooked up a half a dozen pies for a Thanksgiving or Christmas, so long ago I forget which. She sliced me off a little piece first and had me try it. It was awful, but I ate it and thanked her. Later that night after dinner we were getting ready for dessert and grandma just started crying. She had baked all the pies with salt rather than sugar. Oh, this one stings. I know, right? Looking back on it, it was obviously no huge deal. Just dessert. I think it's so memorable to me because grandma felt like she'd ruined everything, and I'm sure I felt partly responsible because I'd had some and didn't say a thing. And, of course, everybody thought it was hilarious that I'd eaten a slice of it. Pumpkin pie, but the person forgot to remove the wax paper after proofing the crust, which caused the filling to not set correctly. So imagine eating pumpkin soup out of a paper bowl, but also eating the bowl at the same time. I ordered my first ever Chicago style pizza in a restaurant and was served what I can only describe as tomato soup in a flan base. The first cut was like a dam breaching and flooding my plate. I'm a Brit and this was in the UK, so I wasn't confident enough to challenge it at the time. I have since seen them and can confirm you should be able to lift slices, not drink it. When we were kids, we were staying overnight at a family friend's house and their sons made waffles. But they used cups of salt instead of teaspoons. My sister and I got our waffles first and started slowly choking them down until the kid's mom finally tried one. She was horrified that we'd kept eating them without saying a word. Holy crap, I made this mistake once half asleep, but it was a tablespoon, and that was bad. I can't believe mistaking cups would result in anything that remotely looked like a waffle. Sounds awful. Guy I worked with gave me an Italian sub he brought back from his house while on break. I told him I was okay but insisted. From the first bite I could tell something was weird about it, but I kept taking small bites to be polite. Eventually the dude tells me that his mom used to work at the gas station next door and that she'd take the subs about to expire and put them in the freezer. The sub was 5 years old. That guy tried to kill you. The meal itself wasn't bad, but the context was. I had a stomach bug. I hadn't kept anything down except liquid for 2 days. I had gotten to the point where I had starved myself for 24 hours and was on the dry crackers diet when my horribly smothering meal offered to make me some food. I declined. I was perfectly fine with my crackers. I wasn't hungry, but would fix myself some crackers when I was. She insisted on making me food. I again declined, which sent her on a tirade about how I needed nutrients and sustenance or I wasn't ever going to get better, and she went on and on and on until I relented and said I would have a slice of toast. Her response was, "I'll make you eggs on toast." And off she went. I thought to myself that I didn't have to eat it, or maybe I could just eat the toast and leave the eggs and it'd be fine. But 10 minutes later she returns and hands me a massive plate of eggs, toast and beans, and then decided to sit on the sofa and grin at me as I ate, asking me questions like, "Is it alright? And do you feel better yet?" And there was no way I could avoid eating it, despite my protests. I just eat what you can. But she still insisted on sitting there and watching me, and I felt obliged to eat it. So I tried to. I really tried, but you can probably guess how it ended. It's not nice projectile vomiting beans out of your nose across the sofa, and I've never been able to eat them again. It was a jello mold with a full salad in the mold. Lettuce, tomato, olives, onions, etc. Grandmother made it. We all were forced to eat it. It is still one of the most disgusting things I have ever had to eat. There was a fad back in the 60s and 70s where it seemed like every other recipe was in a jello mold. Examples? Yes, there was. I'm here to testify that, as a kid, every family gathering there would be 4 or 5 jello molds with who knows what embedded in them. If you didn't try some of Aunt Betty's tuna/centipede/marshmallow jello mold, there was hell to pay when you got home. My grandmother was amazing on Thanksgiving. Most precious memories of a dinner. Delicious everything. Homemade bread and pies. But on a normal day her cooking was like the Great Depression. No seasoning, just food. My dad grew up during the Depression, and it has shaped his attitudes around food for his entire life. 75 plus years later, he can't stand to see food go to waste and will find ways to recycle leftovers or use things of questionable freshness. This is my Mel. She learned from her Depression era raised parents to never waste food. Ever since she got a G-tube in her stomach, she has been sending me all the food in her house. The oldest canned food was from 2007. There were frozen loaves of bread with mold growing in them because she buys from the clearance aisles. The most disgusting was some wrapped up ground beef that smelled like death. A frozen pizza with spaghetti rings as topping. Was the pizza cooked? Yes, it was meant to be a specialty in my honor, since I'm Italian. Very thoughtful. Lol. I'm of Italian descent and my boyfriend's mom served me an Italian meal, spaghetti with ground beef cooked in taco seasoning including the cooked off oil, topped with shredded cheddar cheese. Oh, I'm sure you're used to much better pasta than this. Me, or no, it's tasty. Just because it's not Italian doesn't mean it isn't good. What do you mean it's not Italian? My friend's dad who had depression made us breakfast one morning. It was a good morning for him that day. He made us scrambled eggs, and a lot of eggshells were present in it. He was also gonna use a little cumin, I hope, but for some reason it was kinda cinnamon. Why? It was a pretty unpleasant meal, but his dad was a kind man, so we ate that shit quick as hell, and with fake gusto. Edit, I have rewritten some sentences, because it was all a big mess. Edit 2, thank you for the hugs and wholesome awards. 3. This is the only story in this whole thread that actually warmed my heart. Was at a stadium for a show and afterwards a bunch of us were headed to a party. One of the guys said to follow him in our cars and he'd show us the way. The guy instead took us to his home, where he lived with his mother. He then proceeded to put dry leftover spaghetti out for all of us, and we ate it to be polite, but it was awful. Plus we were wondering how the signals got crossed about going to the party. Then his mother wakes up and sees what we've just eaten and says, "Did you serve the extra sauce with this?" Nope, he didn't. Was a very awkward night. Wait. So there was no party? Undercooked chicken breast. A guy bit into a piece of chicken my dad served in a soup, and it was crunchy. Took a look, completely raw inside. I once ate pasta that had olives in it. I didn't realize that I was supposed to spit out the pits, so I just swallowed them. I thought I was being polite. I was once served fish that was cooked with the scales still on it. The host left the room and I started chowing down. Awful, awful, awful. Scales stuck in my throat for the rest of the day. I thought that was how I was intended to eat it, because I had never seen that before. Then the host came back in, sat down, and immediately peeled off the scales, and ate it like a normal human being. If that doesn't make you feel like a jackass, I don't know what will. No one told me you were supposed to take the husks off of tamales. I refused to eat them again for years. A pork chop that would have better served as a doorstop or perhaps cannonball. Are you sure you weren't served a grilled and seasoned 2x4? A guy in my class, who was from South Africa, brought in a jar of Marmite. He was so excited to share it with us. He was asking everyone if they wanted some, and they all said no. I decided to try it, since I felt bad for him, and I like trying new foods. He was so happy when he handed me a cracker with some on it. The excitement left his face when he saw my reaction after I put it in my mouth. Didn't help that his friend was laughing as I tried to politely say it was okay. A lemon pie made by my Alzheimer's mother-in-law. She used to own her own restaurant. Is a living recipe book. Knows how to make all sorts of complicated meals and desserts from the top of her head. A love language is food. Handmade candies for Christmas. Fudge, sucre a la creme, cakes. All done with love and always perfect. In recent years, her health has declined so much that the most basic of meals at the same quality. The pie crust was so soggy, it felt like eating sandy mud. The lemon custard wasn't holding together and was super lumpy. It felt apart and tasted weird. We all ate it with a smile to make her happy and make her feel good. But to us, it was sad. The last time we had a good pie from her was the last time, and we didn't even know. The first time I met my wife's grandparents, they shoved a plate of savory duck at me and stared at me until I had gagged the entire lot down, then brought me more. Here is the thing, in the north of England, savory duck has nothing to do with duck, traditionally made from breadcrumbs, pig's heart, liver and fatty belly meat or bacon minced together, with herbs added for flavoring. The mixture is then shaped by hand into balls, wrapped around with pig's caul fat and then baked. This is vile enough on its own, but undercooked and soaked in watery gravy. I'm surprised I didn't end up with a tapeworm infection. Never ate anything there again. I would have left town forever and lived in the woods. Excuse me, I just have to go to the restroom first. Tit can. It's a Vietnamese pizza that's topped with cold, raw thickened duck blood as the sauce. I was with the elders and didn't want to look like a little b***tch. Reminds me of eating pigskin, I think. It was in a soup, pieces about 1/2 inch thick, pale pink and mushy with big black hairs still in it. I never saw this dish again, so I wonder if it was the relatives messing with the American cousin. Edit. Everything else was the best food ever in life. I love Vietnamese food too, but maybe not duck blood pizza. Pig skin is great and tasty, but leaving the hairs in is just shit cooking. They don't get digested and poke around your intestines. I once told one of my friend's mums that I really liked pasta. Ick now, cuss who doesn't? Well, when I went round my friends for dinner one time, she cooked what must have been 10 kilograms of pasta for me. I tried. I really tried. The vomit-inducing scale of that food is something I remember to this day. And yet, despite my valiant effort, she was pissed that I wasted her food. Like b***tch, this is like a month's ration for an entire platoon of fully grown men. Ballot, fertilized duck egg/embryo, while in the Philippines. I've eaten some pretty foul things in my life, but dear God, that was the worst. I very nearly gagged. And I later learned that the locals we were staying with, friends of friends, were just ducking with me. They all find it gross, and very few Filipinos still eat it. They were impressed I actually tried it. I have a friend who ate a raw ballot. He didn't know he had to boil it first, but he took it down like a champ. There was also a cute Filipina girl in the audience he was trying to impress. She was not impressed, hahaha. My friend's mother made something they call squishy noodles at his house. It was like a plate of mush on top of overcooked noodles. It was awful. I muscled like half down, and she gave me more. I'm so curious. What kind of mush? Was it like a sauce? What did it taste like? Like a cream sauce with meat in it? If your follow-up is what meat, I'm going to have to say gray meat. Gray meat is the best I can come up with. You know, weird cafeteria smell of old bad food. It tasted like that bad smell. I wonder if it was beef stroganoff from the McCormick packages. Usually that's pretty good, but I can see that being ruined fairly easily. I've choked some questionable things when my kids were small and loved tea parties. The only one I actually spit out was coffee with lemon juice. My wife regularly drinks coffee with lemon juice. Wait for it. And mint tea. She brews tea, adds lemon juice and instant coffee. It's absolutely vile. Your wife might have the most complex palate of anyone that's ever lived. Tasting in layers and colors you can't imagine. My mother-in-law used to make tacos with no taco seasoning. I didn't know this and made myself 3 huge tacos the first time I went over my wife's parents' house for dinner. Plain. Browned. Chopped. Meat. Tacos. That's how my husband's family makes tacos. Taco seasoning is too spicy and they won't even put garlic or onion in it. I've taken over the cooking for them, and now when we have tacos, I add garlic powder, onion powder and cumin, and miraculously, there are never leftovers. Who'd have thought adding seasoning makes food taste good? Taco seasoning is too spicy, and they won't even put garlic or onion in it. Are they from South America by any chance? Some friends of the family are from Uruguay, and they visit every year or two. On their most recent visit, the new entries on the "This is so spicy" list included the sauce on a Little Caesars pizza and Astolfo's frozen lasagna. A bay leaf. As a child of about 8, friends had us over for spaghetti dinner. They used bay leaf for seasoning. My mom wasn't so fancy, I had never seen a bay leaf. I was raised to be polite, so I ate the damn bay leaf thinking it was just how she made spaghetti. To be fair, you're supposed to take it out before serving. In my house, the one who finds the bay leaf is the winner. They don't win anything, but it saves me from having to fish it out the gumbo, since they are on the lookout. When I was growing up, my mom would say finding it means you get to kiss the cook, so now my husband and I both try to hide it in the other person's food to extort kisses from each other. It's the law. When I was 11, I moved to a small town in rural England and acquired a new best friend at school. Her at that point seemingly very normal parents' nice suburban house, 3 kids, trampoline in the backyard, invited me over for dinner and said they were making curry and rhubarb crumble. Curry and rhubarb crumble. Never in the history of mankind have words been so untrue. The curry consisted of, I swear I'm not making this up, a vague mixture of * deep breath, oatmeal, tofu sausages, tomato juice, chopped onions, raisins, leftover broccoli leaves, kale, and scrambled eggs. The only spice in it was the tiniest smidgen of turmeric. All these ingredients were vaguely stirred together, undercooked, and stuck under a broiler for 10 minutes. They gave me a massive portion. I somehow, I still don't know how, was polite enough to finish it. I'm done, I said. No, said her father. In this house, we lick our plates clean. He did. They didn't make me hold it up and lick it like they all did, but they did make me clean the plate with a piece of bread and my fork until they were satisfied. Dessert came. The rhubarb crumble was entirely unsweetened. Not so much as a raisin. I can't remember what the crumble part was because my mind is still haunted by the memory of being forced to eat an entire bowl of unsweetened rhubarb. You know, in old Looney Tunes, when characters would be tricked into eating alum and their heads would shrink? That's what eating it felt like. They made me clean my bowl of that too, and wouldn't let me leave the table until I finished. The next time, I was in middle school and as yet too polite to turn down my best friend's parents. They made spaghetti and meatballs and salad. The spaghetti was utterly plain and so undercooked it was crunchy. The meatballs consisted of a single large orb of some grey material I have yet to identify, and the salad was, I shit you not, limp boiled lettuce. Crunchy spaghetti, unidentified lumpy grey stuff, and boiled lettuce. The fascinating thing is that, while yes, these people were obviously health nuts, it was so much more than that. They were health nuts who also cooked like aliens who had never seen human food before. Or like small children making potions. One of the more edible things they served to me once was a dessert they made up which consisted of halved apples rolled in corn flour with some milk poured on top. One time, they were convinced to make pizza as a treat. They decided to put an onion on it. Fair and fine, you'd think. Not in that house. They just cut the onion in half once and stuck each unchopped half face down on one side of the pizza. Speaking of onions, one time, my friend decided to make a banana and yogurt smoothie. Her dad came in, said it wasn't healthy enough, and made her add an onion to it. They had a homemade cereal I thankfully was able to opt out of trying, which 100% looked like the contents of a vacuum bag. I still have no idea what it contained. Amazingly, it was by no means just me who experienced this. It was a small town, and every girl in it my age had a selection of horror stories about being invited to dinner at this friend's house in the exact same ritualistic horror film fashion. We used to sit around comparing them at sleepovers. Age did not exempt you. One time, this friend's 6-year-old brother had a friend over for dinner at the same time. Poor soul. His mom arrived to pick him up and wasn't allowed to take him home until he finished whatever crime against cooking was on the menu that night. Every story was the same. The ritual that never varied. Every time, these people would make a huge fanfare out of inviting you over for dinner, act all hospitable and excited, set the table, and then serve you a massive helping of the worst food in the world and make you clean your plate of it, dessert included. Who the hell forces you to finish your dessert? It's a mystery to me. They clearly had some degree of self-awareness, because after I came to my senses and started coming up with excuses to avoid eating at their house, they would tease me saying things like, "Ho ho, you don't like our food, do you?" If they had been a bit more fun and less generally puritanical sort of people, I could totally believe this was a family trolling activity where they secretly schemed to come up with the worst possible dishes, secretly filmed themselves forcing people to eat them, and watched it and laughed afterwards. I could believe it. All I'm saying is I'm pretty sure they weren't aliens, but the more I type this out, the more tempted I'm to believe it. Duck it, maybe they were aliens. Before anyone asks, I copy pasted this from a fairly popular Tumblr post I made about this a while ago. It's the same person.